The starship Eclipse drifted silently through the void, its sleek metallic hull reflecting the faint light of a distant sun. On board, Captain Yarrick Voss stood on the observation deck, his sharp blue eyes scanning the endless expanse of space. He was a seasoned explorer, a man who had seen countless worlds and encountered numerous alien species. But nothing could have prepared him for what was about to happen. The Eclipse had been dispatched to investigate a mysterious signal emanating from a remote planet on the edge of known space. The signal was unlike anything they had ever encountered, a strange, pulsating frequency that seemed to resonate with the very fabric of reality. As the ship descended through the planet's atmosphere, Yarrick felt a strange sense of foreboding. The planet below was a lush, verdant world, teeming with life. But there was something else, something ancient and powerful, that seemed to permeate the very air. The landing party, consisting of Yarrick, his first officer Lieutenant Terran Solis, and a team of scientists, made their way through the dense jungle. The air was thick with the scent of exotic flowers, and the sounds of strange creatures echoed through the trees. As they approached the source of the signal, they found themselves standing before a massive, ancient structure. It was a temple, its walls covered in intricate carvings that seemed to tell a story of a long-forgotten civilization. As they entered the temple, the air grew colder, and the light dimmed. The walls seemed to pulse with a faint, otherworldly glow. Yarrick led the way, his hand resting on the hilt of his plasma pistol. They soon found themselves in a large chamber, at the center of which stood a pedestal. On the pedestal was a strange, crystalline object, radiating the same pulsating energy as the signal they had detected. Yarrick approached the object cautiously, his senses on high alert. As he reached out to touch it, a sudden flash of light filled the chamber, and he was thrown backward by a powerful force. When he opened his eyes, he found himself surrounded by a group of alien beings. They were tall and elegant, with shimmering, iridescent skin and eyes that glowed with an inner light. At their head stood a figure who could only be their queen. She was breathtakingly beautiful, her long, flowing hair the color of starlight, and her eyes a deep, mesmerizing violet. She stepped forward, her gaze fixed on Yarrick. "You are the one," she said, her voice a melodic whisper that seemed to echo in his mind. "The one who has been foretold. You are my fated mate." Yarrick stared at her in disbelief. "What are you talking about? I don't even know who you are." The Queen smiled, a mysterious and enigmatic expression. "I am Queen Seraphina of the Zalorians. And you, Captain Yarrick Voss, are destined to be my mate. Our fates are intertwined, bound by the ancient prophecies of my people." Yarrick shook his head, trying to make sense of what was happening. "This is insane. I'm just here to investigate a signal. I didn't sign up for this." Queen Seraphina's expression grew serious. "There is no escaping your destiny, Captain. The bond between us has already been forged. You are now a part of something much larger than yourself. And you will soon find that there are forces at work that will stop at nothing to keep us apart." Before Yarrick could respond, the ground beneath them began to tremble, and the walls of the temple shook violently. The Zalorians looked around in alarm, their glowing eyes wide with fear. "We must leave this place," Seraphina said urgently. "The blood feud has begun, and they will not rest until they have claimed you." Yarrick had no idea what she was talking about, but he knew that he had to get his team out of there. "Everyone, back to the ship," he ordered, his voice firm and commanding. As they made their way back through the jungle, Yarrick couldn't shake the feeling that his life had just taken a drastic and irreversible turn. He had come to this planet seeking answers, but instead, he had found himself caught in the middle of an alien blood feud, with a queen who claimed he was her fated mate. And as they boarded the Eclipse and prepared to leave the planet behind, he couldn't help but wonder what other surprises the universe had in store for him. The Eclipse soared through the stars, leaving the mysterious planet far behind. Captain Yarrick Voss sat in his quarters, staring out at the endless expanse of space. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts and emotions, trying to make sense of everything that had happened. Queen Seraphina's words echoed in his mind, and he couldn't shake the feeling that his life had been irrevocably changed. He had always been a man of action, someone who thrived on exploration and discovery. But this was something else entirely. He had been thrust into a world of ancient prophecies and alien blood feuds, and he had no idea how to navigate it. All he knew was that he had to protect his crew and find a way to unravel the mystery that had ensnared him. As he sat there, lost in thought, the door to his quarters slid open, and Lieutenant Taryn Solis stepped inside. She was a tall, athletic woman with short-cropped hair and a no-nonsense attitude. She had been Jarek's first officer for years, and he trusted her implicitly. "Captain," she said, her voice calm but firm. "We need to talk." Jarek nodded, gesturing for her to sit down. "I know. Things have gotten complicated." "That's an understatement," Taryn replied, taking a seat across from him. "What the hell happened back there? One minute we're investigating a signal, and the next, you're being claimed by some alien queen." Jarek sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I wish I had answers for you, Taryn. But the truth is, I don't know what's going on. All I know is that Queen Seraphina believes that I'm her fated mate, and that there's some kind of ancient prophecy involved. And apparently, there's a blood feud that's been going on for centuries, and now I'm caught in the middle of it." Taryn frowned, her brow furrowing in thought. "This sounds like something out of a bad holovid. But if what you're saying is true, then we need to figure out how to deal with it. We can't just sit back and let this play out." Jarek nodded in agreement. "You're right. We need to find out more about this blood feud, and why Queen Seraphina believes that I'm involved. But first, we need to make sure that the Eclipse and the crew are safe. If there are forces out there that want to keep us apart, then we need to be prepared for anything." As if on cue, the ship's alarms blared, and the lights flickered. Jarek and Taryn exchanged a quick glance before rushing to the bridge. The crew was already at their stations, their faces tense with concentration. "Report." Jarek barked as he took his seat in the captain's chair. "Captain, we're being pursued by an unknown vessel," the tactical officer, a young man named Kale, reported. "It's closing in fast, and it's not responding to hails." Jarek's jaw tightened. "Raise shields and prepare for evasive maneuvers. Taryn, get us out of here." Taryn nodded, her hands flying over the controls. The Eclipse banked sharply, trying to shake off their pursuer. But the alien ship was fast, and it was gaining on them. "Captain, they're locking weapons." Kale shouted. "Fire at will." Jarek ordered. The Eclipse's weapon systems came to life, unleashing a barrage of plasma bolts at the alien ship. But the enemy vessel was agile, dodging the attacks with ease. It returned fire, and the Eclipse shuddered under the impact. "Shields at 60%. Kale reported. Jarek clenched his fists, his mind racing. They were outmatched, and they needed a way out. "Taryn, can we make the jump to hyperspace?" Taryn shook her head. "Not with their proximity. They'll just follow us." Jarek cursed under his breath. They were running out of options. But then, a thought occurred to him. "Kale, target their engines. If we can disable them, we might be able to make a break for it." Kale nodded, his fingers flying over the controls. The Eclipse's weapons locked onto the alien ship's engines, and a volley of plasma bolts streaked through the void. The enemy ship tried to evade, but it was too late. The bolt struck true, and the alien vessel's engines erupted in a burst of flame. "Direct hit." Kale shouted. "Their engines are down. Now, Taryn." Jarek ordered. Taryn didn't need to be told twice. She activated the hyperspace drive, and the Eclipse shot forward, leaving their pursuer far behind. As the ship settled into hyperspace, Jarek let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. They had escaped, but he knew that this was only the beginning. The blood feud was real, and it was coming for him. The eclipse emerged from hyperspace in a remote sector of the galaxy, far from the prying eyes of their pursuers. Captain Yarrick Voss sat in his quarters, staring at the data pad in his hands. It contained the information they had gathered from the alien temple, and he was determined to make sense of it. The carvings on the temple walls had been translated by the ship's linguist, a brilliant young woman named Lyra. She had worked tirelessly to decipher the ancient script, and now Yarrick had the first piece of the puzzle. The prophecy spoke of a great conflict between two ancient alien races, the Zalorians and the Krylos. The two races had once been allies, but a betrayal had led to a bitter and bloody feud that had lasted for centuries. The prophecy foretold of a time when a human would come, a man from the stars, who would unite the two races and bring an end to the bloodshed. Yarrick couldn't believe what he was reading. It was insane to think that he, a simple starship captain, could be the key to ending a centuries-old conflict. But the more he thought about it, the more it made sense. Queen Seraphina had called him her fated mate, and the Krylos had attacked them without provocation. It was clear that both sides believed in the prophecy, and they were willing to do whatever it took to ensure that it came to pass. Yarrick knew that he couldn't do this alone. He needed help, and he needed to understand the full scope of what he was dealing with. He called a meeting of his senior officers, and they gathered in the ship's briefing room. "All right, people," Yarrick began, his voice steady and commanding. "We've got a situation on our hands. The Zalorians and the Krylos are locked in a blood feud that's been going on for centuries. And according to an ancient prophecy, I'm supposed to be the one to end it." The room was silent as the officers processed this information. Finally, Terran spoke up. "So, what's the plan, Captain? How do we stop a war that's been going on for longer than humanity has been spacefaring?" Yarrick sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I don't know yet. But we need to find out more about this prophecy, and why both sides believe that I'm the key to ending it. Lyra, I need you to keep working on the translations. See if you can find anything else that might help us." Lyra nodded, her eyes focused and determined. "I'll do my best, Captain." Yarrick turned to Kale. "Kale, I need you to keep an eye on our sensors. If the Krylos or the Zalorians show up, I want to know about it immediately." Kale gave a sharp nod. "Aye, Captain." Yarrick looked around the room, his gaze steady and resolute. "We're in uncharted territory here, people. But we've faced tough situations before, and we've always come out on top. This is no different. We'll find a way to end this blood feud, and we'll do it together." The officers nodded in agreement, their expressions determined. They knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but they were ready to face whatever challenges came their way. As the meeting adjourned, Yarrick returned to his quarters, his mind racing with thoughts and plans. He knew that he had to find a way to bring the Zalorians and the Krylos together, but he had no idea how to do it. The weight of the prophecy was heavy on his shoulders, and he couldn't shake the feeling that the fate of two entire races rested in his hands. But he also knew that he couldn't do it alone. He needed Queen Seraphina's help. She was the key to understanding the Zalorians, and she might be able to provide the answers he needed. Yarrick activated the ship's communication system, sending a message to Queen Seraphina. He didn't know if she would respond, but he had to try. "Queen Seraphina," he began, his voice steady and firm. "This is Captain Yarrick Voss of the starship Eclipse. We need to talk. I believe that together, we can find a way to end this blood feud. But I need your help. Please, respond." He waited, his heart pounding in his chest. Minutes passed, and there was no response. Just as he was about to give up, the screen flickered to life, and Queen Seraphina's face appeared. "Captain Voss," she said, her voice calm and composed. "I have been waiting for your call. It seems that fate has brought us together once again." Yarrick nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "We need to meet. There's a lot we need to discuss." Queen Seraphina smiled, a mysterious and enigmatic expression. "Indeed, Captain. I will send you the coordinates to a neutral location. We will meet there, and we will discuss the future of our peoples. The screen went dark, and Yarek let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. He had taken the first step, but he knew that the road ahead would be long and difficult. The blood feud was far from over, and the fate of two races rested in his hands. But he was ready. He had to be. The eclipse arrived at the coordinates provided by Queen Seraphina, a remote asteroid field on the edge of Zalorian space. The meeting place was a small, neutral outpost, a place where both Zalorians and Krylos could meet without fear of attack. Captain Yarek Voss stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The outpost was a small, unassuming structure, but he knew that it held the key to ending the blood feud. He turned to Terran, who was standing beside him. "Are we ready?" he asked, his voice steady and calm. Terran nodded, her expression determined. "We're ready, Captain. The crew is on high alert, and we're prepared for anything." Yarek took a deep breath, steeling himself for what was to come. "All right. Let's do this." He led the way to the shuttle bay, where a small team was waiting. They boarded the shuttle and made their way to the outpost, their hearts pounding with anticipation. As they approached the outpost, they were met by a group of Zalorian guards. The guards escorted them inside, where Queen Seraphina was waiting. She was as beautiful as ever, her violet eyes shining with an inner light. "Captain Voss," she said, her voice a melodic whisper. "I am glad you came." Yarek nodded, his gaze steady and resolute. "We need to end this blood feud, Queen Seraphina. And I believe that together, we can do it." Queen Seraphina smiled, a mysterious and enigmatic expression. "Indeed, Captain. But the path ahead will not be easy. The Krylos are a proud and stubborn people, and they will not easily set aside their hatred for us." Yarek frowned, his mind racing. "Then we need to find a way to show them that peace is possible. We need to find common ground, something that both sides can agree on." Queen Seraphina nodded, her expression thoughtful. "There is one thing that both the Zalorians and the Krylos hold dear. The ancient artifact that you found in the temple. It is a symbol of our shared history, a reminder of the time when our peoples were allies." Jarek's eyes widened in realization. "The crystal. If we can use it to remind the Krylos of our shared past, maybe we can convince them to lay down their arms." Queen Seraphina smiled, a glimmer of hope in her eyes. "It is a risky plan, Captain. But it may be our only chance." Yarek nodded, his determination unwavering. "Then we'll do it. We'll take the crystal to the Krylos and show them that peace is possible." Queen Seraphina reached out, placing a hand on Jarek's arm. "Thank you, Captain. You are truly the one foretold in the prophecy. Together, we will end this blood feud." Yarek felt a surge of determination, a sense of purpose that he had never felt before. He knew that the road ahead would be difficult, but he was ready to face whatever challenges came his way. As they prepared to leave the outpost, Yarek couldn't shake the feeling that they were on the brink of something monumental. The fate of two races rested in his hands, and he was determined to see it through. But as they made their way back to the eclipse, a sense of unease settled over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that there were forces at work that they couldn't see. And as the shuttle docked with the eclipse, the ship's alarms blared, and the lights flickered. Jarek's heart sank as he realized that their journey was far from over. The blood feud was still raging, and the battle for peace was just beginning. The eclipse was under attack. Krylos warships had emerged from hyperspace, their weapons trained on the human vessel. Captain Yarek Voss stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view screen. The Krylos ships were fast and heavily armed, and they were closing in fast. "Raise shields," Yarek ordered, his voice firm and commanding. "Arm all weapons and prepare for evasive maneuvers." Lieutenant Terran Solis nodded, her fingers flying across the control panel. "Shields at maximum." Weapon systems online. They're hailing us, Captain. Yarrick exhaled sharply. On screen. The view screen flickered, revealing the imposing figure of High Warlord Kalos, the Krylos leader. His crimson armor gleamed under the dim light of his warship's bridge, and his piercing golden eyes burned with hostility. Captain Voss, Kalos growled, his voice a low rumble. You have aligned yourself with the Zalorians. That makes you our enemy. Surrender now, or be destroyed. Yarrick stood tall, his expression unwavering. High Warlord Kalos, I am not your enemy. I am here to put an end to this blood feud. This war has lasted for centuries, and it has cost both your people and the Zalorians dearly. It's time for peace. Kalos sneered. Peace? There can be no peace with those who betrayed us. The Zalorians stole what was rightfully ours, and now they hide behind their so-called prophecy. I will see them eradicated. And you, Captain, will share their fate. Yarrick clenched his fists. If you refuse to listen to reason, then perhaps this will change your mind. He motioned to Lyra, who activated the ship's transmission system. A holographic projection of the ancient crystal appeared before Kalos. The crystal pulsed with an ethereal light, resonating with the same energy that had been detected in the temple. Kalos' expression faltered for a brief moment. That artifact. Where did you find it? Queen Seraphina stepped forward, her violet eyes locking onto Kalos through the transmission. It was hidden away, buried beneath the ruins of our ancestors. This crystal is proof that our people were once united. We were not always enemies, Kalos. We were allies, bound by something greater than war. Let us end this cycle of vengeance. Kalos hesitated. The bridge of his warship fell silent. The Krylos crew exchanged uneasy glances, waiting for their leader's response. Yarrick pressed on. High Warlord, I understand your pain. I understand the anger and loss that have fueled this war. But think of your people. Think of the generations that have known nothing but conflict. You have the power to change that. To forge a new path. Will you stand for peace, or will you let your people suffer for the sins of the past? The warlord's golden eyes darkened with contemplation. His grip on his weapon tightened, and for a moment, Yarrick feared he would choose destruction over diplomacy. Then, with a deep, weary sigh, Kalos lowered his weapon. You speak with the fire of a warrior, Captain Voss. And the wisdom of a leader. He turned his gaze to Seraphina. Perhaps we have allowed our hatred to blind us for too long. Perhaps it is time we break free from the chains of our ancestors. Seraphina stepped forward. Let us end this war together, Kalos. Let us honor those we have lost by ensuring no more lives are taken in vain. Kalos nodded solemnly. We will meet. We will discuss the terms of peace. But know this, Queen of the Zalorians, if this is a deception, I will not hesitate to burn your world to ashes. Yarrick exhaled in relief as the transmission ended. The Krylos ships withdrew, moving into a defensive formation rather than an aggressive one. Terran turned to him, a hint of disbelief in her eyes. Did we really just do that? Did we just stop a war? Yarrick let a small smile tug at the corner of his lips. We took the first step. The hardest step. Now, we make sure it holds. Queen Seraphina placed a hand on his arm. You have fulfilled the prophecy, Captain Voss. Our fates were intertwined for a reason. And now, because of you, our people have a future. Yarrick looked out at the vastness of space, his mind still racing. The war wasn't over, but the tides had shifted. Peace was possible. And for the first time in a long while, he felt something he had nearly forgotten, hope. The journey was far from over, but it was a beginning. And beginnings were always where the greatest adventures began.